Hello cornballs, it's Carla. I am here again in my kitchen today with a recipe from That Sounds So Good. Today I'm making pork and pozole stew. Mexican pozole is one of my all-time favorite dishes to eat. If I'm in the mood for pozole, I am going out to get it because I want it to be prepared by someone who really knows what they're doing and is going to give me all of those amazing flavors of a long-cooked pozole. It was definitely eating pozole that I first fell in love with the ingredient pozole, which in English is known as hominy. I love this ingredient, and for the stew that I'm making today, I'm using pork. I put them together and figured out a way that you can shove everything into the oven and cook through, and at the end you finish each bowl with like lots of snappy, crunchy, herby toppings. It is the thing that I make for myself when I can't get out for the real thing. The first step of this recipe is to actually soak the pozole. So when you buy it, it's going to be dry and little. This is very similar to dried beans, actually. You can buy hominy already cooked in a can, or you can buy it dried, soak it, and then cook it from scratch. This is what has already happened here. These are the soaked pozole. You can see how much they've plumped up. The pozole has been covered with the water it's soaked in, plus a little more, just so that I have several inches of water above the level of the pozole. So I'm gonna add a full tablespoon of Diamond Kosher to this water. Before I add any of the other ingredients that are gonna flavor this broth, I am gonna bring it to a simmer, skim it, and then carry on. Now we're over here, waiting for this to come up to a simmer, and I'm gonna prep the things that go in. Got a regular old onion. I'm not even peeling it. A few cloves of garlic, which I will peel. Arbitrary, completely. I also have one small dried chili. This is a ceviche chili or ceviche. It's one of those chilies that I bought when I was at Calusian's. Turns out it's like a very random chili that you're not gonna probably find out in the world. So a pasilla chili is a great choice, or any other dried red chili that doesn't pack too much heat. Garlic's just going in, the onion, the chili, which I'm just squeezing to open up a little bit. I'm just gonna let it do its thing. I have a big handful of fresh oregano. If you didn't have oregano and wanted to use cilantro instead, I think that would be really nice. I'm gonna finish the dish with more oregano, so I like that dried and fresh oregano. The last thing is some cumin. I'm using cumin seeds, but if you have ground cumin and you don't have cumin seeds in the house, just go ahead and use half the amount of ground cumin. You could also use coriander. Coriander with cilantro would be a nice combo. So that cumin's ready. And this has already been salted, so I'm not adding salt at this point. I don't think it needs black pepper. So this is really everything that is in the base of the soup. I turn this down to maintain a low simmer while I do the pork, and then they're gonna come together. I have boneless pork shoulder here. It's about equivalent to half of a pork shoulder. I'm seasoning this with a tablespoon of salt on all sides. Okay, getting this started, there's gonna be tons of fat rendering once the pork is browning, but I'm getting things started with a little bit of regular oil in the bottom of my largest cast iron skillet. And this browning step is gonna take time. Don't cheat yourself. This is like a fun part of cooking for me. If you like to cook, you're gonna find a reason to do that gives you pleasure. It could be meditative, it could be creative, it could be scientific, it could be aromatherapy. It's gonna be whatever it is for you, but there is like time. Time is involved. Time, transformation, heat, magic. If all of the pork doesn't fit in your skillet at the same time, don't sweat it, but don't crowd the pan. As these guys cook, they're gonna shrink. As you turn them over, you're gonna like change the geometry of what's happening in the skillet, and then those guys will find their way. So I've been turning and maneuvering and flipping and watching. 24 to 26 minutes is what the recipe said. It took us 25 to get to this point. Really beautiful, dark golden color on all sides. And the fact that they're slightly uneven sizes also is not gonna matter. They're gonna end up going into the stew. They're gonna fall apart. They're gonna get shreddy. So all of that will end up being kind of pulled apart, and they'll kind of break on their muscle line. I have a heat-proof bowl here, and I want to drain off the fat. I'm going to keep the heat off for the deglazing. I think there's enough residual heat in the pan. In the way that you would deglaze with a wine to give a little bit of brightness, I'm using cider vinegar because I'm not making anybody open up a wine bottle for 2 tablespoons. Using my wooden spoon to scrape along the bottom, make sure all of those browned bits of protein get loosened. Okay. Everything is released. I can see the little bits floating around. It smells good. And I'm going to carefully pour this into the pozole. I want to show you where the pozole is at now. It's just been given this like half-hour head start. They're definitely not there yet, but the kernel of the pozole is starting to split. That's what they're all going to look like when they're done. You're looking for them all to kind of look like they've exploded or almost like popcorn. So now it's time for marriage. Pork and pozole and all of their drippings. My oven is at 325, and rather than simmering this the entire time on the stovetop, I'm gonna get a really nice, gentle, surrounding, even heat from the oven. I'm gonna add the lid, and this is quite full, so carefully put it into the oven. This is gonna go for 3 hours. I'm gonna set a timer for an hour and a half, come back, open the lid, stir things around. If the liquid is boiling, I'm gonna drop the temperature. If the liquid is at that nice low simmer, then we're good to go. So you have 90 minutes right now. I think that's actually a category on Netflix now, movies that are under an hour and a half. Check it out. It is time to take out the pork and pozole stew, and even better, it is time for me to eat it. Even with a closed lid, like the corny, porky smell is escaping. So a little bit of simmering happening around the edges. This liquid level is good. It's obviously like absorbed a lot while it was in there, but it didn't over reduce. I've got a couple things that I just want to get out of the way. Oregano stem, the chili, it's given up all of its flavor. And the other thing, obviously, I need to check is that the pork is super tender and falling apart. So that was, you know, tender enough to break apart with a spoon. So we love to see it, but it's not dry. If there are any larger pieces of pork, just go ahead and shred them a little. For example, this might be too big of a piece. So I'm just shredding that right in here. Gorgeous and beautiful. Smells amazing. I'm gonna use my favorite wooden ladle that my friend Liz Kaiser got for me many, many years ago. Hello, Liz. So this is one of my favorite like party dishes. You could do this as a big buffet. It's very warming. It's very easy. Then you get to top it however you like it. Some red onion. At the time of taping, it's 2022. 2022 has been the year that I told my body, like, you need to deal because we're eating raw onion now. And I'm so happy about it. It's been a revelation. Cilantro, avocado, red onion. This is Mexican oregano. If you don't have it, use regular oregano, but it's so much more fragrant. It gives more. So you want to crumble that over right at the end to get all of the aromas. And then just a few chippies. Okay, this looks amazing. I'm gonna dig in. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner. If you put this in front of me, I would eat it. Actually, someone once doubted my love of pozole, the ingredient pozole, and said, you just love pozole because you want to sit down and eat a bowl full of starchy food. And I was like, why are you making that sound like it's a bad, like it's a bad thing? Can you imagine trying to shame me by saying you just want to eat a bowl full of starchy stuff? Like, yeah, I do. And if you don't, like, maybe we shouldn't sit on the same side of the table.